culture and difference between what we understand. And here's a building right here that's buried in the ground. All right. And you see all these guys wearing white, these priests in white. And this right here, I guess, is to protect the sacraments that's within this building that's buried in the ground, that's built underground in this cavern, so to speak, or open pit. And that's in this building. I'm quite sure a lot of the most sacred artifacts are kept there. And you know it's shaped like a cross. Now, you can Google the Church of Ethiopia or the Coptic Church, and you'll find all this information. But it's absolutely gorgeous. The engineering to build such a building from the bottom, underground, not even underground, but they break through those stones, and you can tell there's some stonework. They had to build right under there and do some stonework to build that structure. Is totally amazing. You'll never see that anywhere else. Now, remember I was talking to you about in Genesis chapter 2 about the rivers, Pison, of course, the Tigris, Euphrates, the Tigris being Hiddekel, the Euphrates, and then you have the Pison. So where is Gihon? Where is Gihon? Well, Gihon is the Red Sea, which flows through Ethiopia. It flows right into Ethiopia. Okay? And there's a photograph. You see the Mediterranean. You see the Nile River, the Lake of Nassau. You see the Red Sea, which is... and you see the Sinai Peninsula. You see the Rub al-Khali Desert, and you have Jordan and the Dead Sea. Let's just want to just get all mindset on geography. And you see on the bottom left the Pison, or the Red Sea, which is also what's known as the Pison or Pison rivers. Of course, the Hiddekel is the Tigris River, which goes towards what? East Assyria. Where is East Assyria? East Assyria is what is now Iraq. Where is Assyria? You'll find Assyria, and not only Assyria, Babylon right in Iraq, what is known as Iraq. Where is Mesopotamia? Mesopotamia, between the two rivers, is Iraq. Euphrates and Tigris River, or Hiddekel, is right there in Iraq. And then you got the Pison River that goes right through the Arabia, which is now Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or the Arabian Desert. But right here, the Red Sea is outlined right there. You can't miss it. It's originally the Pison River. That's what it was called. And where all this took place, where did all this took place? All this is in what? Africa. It's Africa, Kush. All right? Amen. So where's Ethiopia? Can anybody tell me where Ethiopia is? I'm looking on my screen here, see if I got any response. Where can I find Ethiopia? Where is Ethiopia? Ethiopia is in Africa. It's right near the Horn of Africa, right at it. Somalia to the east, Djibouti to the northeast, Eritrea to the north, and to the northwest Sudan, and the southwest Kenya. So, and then you got Uganda, and you can't see what other country that is on but on that portion of Sudan, that's called Southern Sudan. And pray for the people there much slavery is taking place there, and slave trade, and much fighting is taking place there as well. A lot of people suffering in that area. So let's keep the people of Southern Sudan, Christian faith people, in prayer. Okay. So as you can see on this map, Africa just don't end at the Sinai Desert between nation of Israel and Egypt, okay, or the Sinai Peninsula. Africa does not end in the southern border of Morocco, Algeria, Tanzania, Libya, Sudan, and Egypt. Africa does not stop at Israel, formerly known as the Palestine, land of or the land of Canaan, formerly known as the Kingdom of Israel. We want to go that far. It doesn't stop at Saudi Arabia or the Arabians. It don't stop at Syria. It doesn't stop at Kuwait. It doesn't stop at Jordan, and it definitely doesn't stop at Yemen, Bahrain, or Iran. It doesn't stop there, and it definitely don't stop at Qatar, United Arab Emirates. It's still part of Africa, but the borders of Africa truly stops at the mountains of Asia, separating Iraq from Iran. That's the only time where Africa stopped, other than the Persian Gulf as well. That's where Africa ends, right at the Persian Gulf. You see, Africa does not end in the Sinai Desert. It extends all the way up to past the Euphrates River. So I don't know where they talk about the Middle East and where they get all this Middle East talk. But let's talk about Middle East. Where did this term come from? Well, I did some research and found out it may originate from 1850 of the British India Office. Of course, India, the British India Corporation has a lot to do with the incorporation and control of India, which is also part of Pakistan, which is now in Pakistan, West India, and which is a shame. But they took advantage of the people of those land, and it really had nothing to do with it. But it has a lot to do. It also has a lot to do with its war effort in Europe, and of course in that area of Africa, back in World War I and World War II, to establish boundaries. It's like kind of remind me of Central Command. It really does, as a strategy, as an area of zone. You got Northcom, you got UCOM, you got European Command, you got Central Command, you got Southern Command, all right, and you got PACON, which is the Pacific Command. Well, the British set theirs up in similar fashion at that time. I may be saying a little bit more than I need to, but it gives you a point of the regional boundaries in which these empires have control and how they control them. And of course, like the United States, we got Central Command right in where. I ain't gonna say no further. But if you observe on the global map, you will also see no waters or mountains separating the Middle East from the rest of Africa. And the so-called Middle East is in every way part of Africa. So don't leave, if you don't believe me, look at your old encyclopedias. Look at your A encyclopedias. Look at your M encyclopedia. A encyclopedia for Africa, M encyclopedia for Middle East, if you like, World Book Encyclopedia. Now, this is what they're talking about Middle East, and that's what the British consider Middle East. They included Turkey, it included Libya. It's not all Africa, just portion of it. It got Libya now. Today they just got Egypt and Sudan. Now they don't even add Sudan. This is an old 2012 map from Baton, and I'm gonna give the credit to Encyclopedia Britannica. But the interesting thing on the other maps, it shows a whole different look. When you go to my World Book map, it'll show only Egypt as part of the Middle East, and you got connected to Israel. And Turkey is not even considered Middle East, but you have Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. All right, and then you have Iran, and that's it. I didn't know Afghanistan was part, but if you look on another map, you'll find the Middle East does also includes Uzbekistan, the former Soviet republics like Uzbekistan, Armenia, Tajikistan. I hope I ain't butchered that name, but they also have Pakistan and India, and also the north in India. I forget the name of that place, but they've been fighting over with Pakistan as a disputed area between Pakistan and China, part of China. So it goes way back. But all these ethnic kingdoms, kingdoms, empires, and tribal borders were redone or removed by the British, Spanish, Islamic, Portugal empire, causing confusion. I'm talking about all of Africa, because all Africa, these boundaries that these empires had placed in these areas, I mean, you got overlapping, and not just on religious ground, but I'm going to go and show you where it's overlapping boundaries according to ethnicity. So, which can bring a lot of problem. But if you look here on this map, the portion of the Middle East, of course, you got Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, which is part of Turkmenistan, and then you got Kyrgyzstan, that's part of Russia. But Tajikistan is independent, Uzbekistan is independent. Turkmenistan, I'm not so sure, but I still think that's part of Russia. The Azerbaijani and the Armenians, Armenia, part of Armenia is part of it, but Azerbaijan and Iran, and of course Turkey. But if you look here for Islam, you got mostly you're Sunni Muslim. This whole gray area is mostly Sunni, even by religion of denomination or religion. You got Shias and so you look at most of Iran, most of Persia or Iran is mostly Shiite, and only a small portion of it population that lives in a geographic area. And I had to speak with somebody about geographic area because people don't move interchangeably like in the United States. You may have one group of Christians live in this town, and then they move out. Everybody moved out of this town, and somebody else moved in. It's not the same. In this case, wherever you're born at, that's where your family and you stay, depending on your level of influence or tribal influence. So if you notice in Iran, from Azerbaijan, and then you got part of Armenia, that's mostly Shia. And southern Iraq is Shia. Now the British screwed that bad boy up because they could have made that part of separating Iraq as a whole instead of having tension between religious sects. That you got mostly Shia living and have a different way of living, and you got the northern Iraq, which is Sunni, have a whole different way of living, and a lot of times they clash. And of course, the Sunni ruled over the Shiites of southern Iraq with a hard fist. If you understand history of it, when Saddam Hussein was in charge, and he really persecuted the Shia in southern Iraq. And of course, in the northern Iraq area, you got the Kurds who are also Sunni. And of course, that makes no difference to Saddam. He butchered them too with gas and persecution. So, I mean, it doesn't matter, what kind of Muslim you are. It's all about what kind of people, and who's in charge. But if you notice, even right now, in Baghdad, the Shias are now in charge of all of Iraq. And that's the rulemaking legislation. And so, of course, they moved towards a relationship with Iran, which was their enemy. Kuwait is mostly Shia too. Bahrain is Shia. Qatar is Shia. But I think one of them is ruled by a Sunni Muslim as their king. So that could be debatable. And then, of course, United Arab Emirates has a Shia population, and Qatar has mostly a Shia population as well. So it varies. Of course, Afghanistan, you go into Pakistan, northern Pakistan, very strong Shia community, and North India has a Shia community. It used to be sheiks or I forgot what kind of sect, India sect, but they were all moved out by the Pakistani and rebel groups that's in northern India. So that still can be debatable. But mostly Afghanistan is mostly Shia, except for the central. Uh, and I forgot the name of the tribe that's basically the Talibanis that ruled mostly of Afghanistan. But their tribe basically is based in southern Afghanistan, and they mostly Sunni. And they live out. They believe in a strong Islamic law-driven society. Same with Iran, and even the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has a strong Shia, not Shia, but man, I forgot the name what I was just named, but I just need an Islamic law, okay, that rules all society, okay, not just religion, it's all society. They're just saying like the 18 articles of faith every Baptist Christian live by, but that's also is law in the United States. Let's say we can do it that way, but that's not going to happen here. So this is a faith that's intertwined with government. You got a large Sunni population in Lebanon. That's what led to the war between Hezbollah and Israel because of the Shia connection and their support they received through Iran. And of course, Iran is supporting Syria, which also is mostly Sunni, but in this case, on their hatred to Israel. And of course, they want to have major influence in the area, which will trying to outdo Saudi Arabia and most Sunnis influential in the region. They want to be the most power in the region. That's the goal for Iran, is to be the big influencer, not Saudi Arabia, or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So they want to be the new boss. But that's basically where it's at as far as religion. Now, as far as ethnic groups, okay, if you look on your north, you see mostly green, you see Turks, all right? And then if you go down to the south where Syria is, in yellow, you see Arab. If you go to Egypt, you see it's in yellow, Arabs. If you go down to Saudi Arabia, Yemen, East Yemen, where this Tutsi group, the rebel group got control, it's Arab. They're all Arabs. United Arab Emirates, Arabs. And you can look here in the capital of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on this map. You'll notice it's totally Arab. So if you go to North Africa, most of the people are Arab until you get to around Morocco. A lot of people will consider themselves from West Libya, more so that they'll consider themselves more of their kinship or ethnic group, more so than calling themselves Arab. I mean, if you go to northern Sudan or Sudan itself, they consider them, and they look just as black as I am. They do not consider themselves black. They consider themselves Arabs. Okay? Of course, Turks in green, you got in purple, you got the Greek. All right? You got the Persians, Persia, or the Assyrians, Chaldeans, and Syrians, right in northern Iraq. Okay? And that's a whole different color, if I may. Of course, the color is a little confusing because it's all intertwined. You can't tell. You got to be looking at it very carefully. And of course, Kurdistan, the Kurds, let's see, what color is that? Kurds have a great big amount of territory, to be honest with you, as far as the ethnicity. If you look up the Kurds, and a lot of my brothers of arms and sisters supported the Kurds when we were in the United States, when in Iraq. And I'm saying all this because there's an ethnic connection. How the British poorly aligned these territories. Of course, the Turks were pissed off; they didn't want it that way. But the Turks are in Kurdistan, Turkey, and that's a debate too. And I don't want to make my friends angry at me because I love the Turks and I love the Kurds too. Turks can cook some great food, got a lot of history. That's Asia Minor, and I want to have much respect for that region. But most of that part of like northern Iraq, north Iran, northeast Iraq, that's all Kurds. So British should have wrote up set of land parameters for the Kurdish people. Okay, they should have done that. And according to ethnic groups, they should have just cut this out in that way because they really screwed up Iraq. They really did, and Iran. And of course, Russia controlled most of Iran, not the British. British got the southern portion influence. But the point of the matter is, when those lines were drawn, boundaries were drawn, they did not keep in mind the ethnicity. And the same thing for the rest of Africa too. It's the same way. It's the same way. And that's why that causes conflict. That causes conflict. Okay? You know, if you notice on yellow, every last one of the countries that I mentioned were Sunni or Shia, they all classify themselves as what? Arabs. Until you get closer to Persia. Until you get closer to the Kurdistan region, autonomous region. Okay? And some of the areas not considered autonomous because, you know, the government doesn't play that. So British empires, pretty much taking advantage of the resources in these regions and pretty much screwed it up. You know, screwed it up, and that's why they're still screwed up to this day. I mean, a lot of these regions have a lot of resources. I mean, and of course, they're not just British Empire, German Empire. You know, the prior to towards the end of World War II, but up to that point, Germany had quite a bit of empire, had an empire in the East Pacific area and in Africa. The Germans did, okay? And so I mean, even the Portuguese and a lot of the caliphate of the Islamic State has screwed it up as well, causing chaos and confusion and strife. Empire brings greed. It really did at this time. It brought a lot of greed, devastation. It took advantage of natural resources like goods of copper, iron, bronze, diamonds, and oil. British really profited. I mean, a lot of the European nations, including the Caliphate, have really profited in corruption. Those nations have really profited off of these resources of these mines that's in these regions, from East Africa all the way to the continent itself, which is part of the continent of Africa. I mean, even took advantage of Kuwait, you know. And a lot of these regions, you know, had a lot of great minerals like oil deposits. I mean, Kuwait has no great oil deposits. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Libya have great. And there's other countries like Nigeria has huge oil deposits, the 8th largest oil exporter in the world. However, people are still living in poverty in Nigeria, and I don't understand that. I don't understand. Nigeria is a beautiful country, great cities and metropolis, lots of luxurious communities and resorts, but their poorer areas are shanty towns. And a lot of people of that area are not benefiting as much as others, you know. So across the board, to be honest with you, it should be like like a little Saudi Arabia, you know, where everybody's prospering, like Kuwait. But 8th largest oil deposit in the world, oil producer in the world, and yet you got mass poverty. That means corruption and greed is a hallmark of what's going on in those areas, and that's why there's so much rebellion and strife within that country, and that's why people are being taken advantage of, and there's kidnappings and robberies. You know, that's why you got to have when you buy property, you got to have a full fence yard and hire a gatekeeper to open and close your fence, and people will rob you. You put it in your driveway, someone will pull up behind you, come out with a gun to shoot. And unless you have an armed guard to protect you, to back you up, I mean, you're pretty much screwed. They can hijack. You're talking about modern day carjacking. You know, it takes carjacking to a whole new level. You got mismanagement of crop rotations. You got mismanagement of water, how to use water. I mean, in Israel, it is prospering beyond belief. It is green in Israel because the Israeli government sanctioned the proper use of water, planting trees and stuff to bring the green, and it also affects the weather. While the rest of them, like Lebanon and Syria, they're all warring against Jordan. Come on, brother Jordan. And of course, the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, all you had to do is plant some trees and irrigate it, use the water. You got a whole ocean and see that you have to filtrate, take that salt and sell it, and keep your costs down by selling that salt. Then you'll have water and you can bring back farmland. You can bring back irrigation. You can have a change of weather by planting trees. Lebanon is known for its forest. Was known. A lot of the region was green and lush and was warm, and now it's mostly desert. A lot of it don't have to stay there. All you have to do is proper irrigation, proper use of water resources, use some of that ocean water, I say, and filtrate. I mean, I used to do water treatment, and one of the wonderful things about water treatment, you can treat river water, stream water, lakes. There's another term for it. I can't remember it right offhand. Salt water from the ocean can be clean. I mean, you can clean that water without even adding chlorine to it. So that water, you can start watering plants and irrigating, used for irrigating, farming, and also to grow forest, to bring back the forest into Lebanon, to bring back the forest in Syria, to bring back the forest in Jordan, not just Israel, and to bring back lush floors in Egypt. You have to invest in your resources so you can have a more stable economy, in my opinion, and more water to drink for your people. Okay, instead of living in the areas of mismanagement, turn those areas green. That's what China's doing with West China. China is planting trees, and if you notice, West China is becoming greener and greener. And what that's going to do with weather? It's going to affect weather because there's going to be more moisture held by that area. Okay, and water is just like gold. I mean, now China's having some problem managing water because when you get rain, they don't have a means to control that water flow, and it'd be too much. It causes damages, landslides, but it also can cause dams to burst. With our proper management and distribution, you can pump that water out, excess water out, best you can, and put it in areas that needs it, and build an area and fill it up, and that way you have water for dry season. I mean, that's just my opinion. Soviet Union screwed up Uzbekistan by pumping out water for farming and changing the way that river flow, and now you got lakes drying up in Uzbekistan and other portion of Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan, in those areas of the former Soviet republics. But it could be an economical boom. Those areas Africa could be the new powerhouse because it has so much resources. And I'm talking about Africa, and I mean also East Africa, because East Africa, which is Iraq, have oil. It can be beautiful. I mean, Kuwait is benefiting. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain is benefiting. UAE Arab Emirate is prospering. So is Oman. Yemen got to get its act together. Jordan is doing well. Syria is being, leadership abuse can mess up everything. It has the ability to be the most prosperous country in the world. It also has the ability to be the greatest tourist attraction because of location and history, because of biblical history as well. I mean, I would love to go to Syria and see all the landmarks on which Apostle Paul and all the writers of the Bible have traveled to. I would love to go to Lebanon and see the forest of Lebanon where it was, and see where King Solomon used those cedar trees to build the temple. I would love to see that. I prefer to see a nation prosper than being impoverished, and that's including the rest of Kush. But of course, empires come and go, and they come in just like um, vipers and slugs and attach to you and suck out your blood until you die. And there's just no excuse for it. And we can't make excuses. And to see, as an American who happens to be black, who is a descendant of Africa, especially particularly Ghana. I mean, I can not consider myself as African because I wasn't born there. I'm just a descendant from that era. That's my race. But I'm a new race. I'm an American, and that's where it is. I want somebody to explain to me about this Middle East thing and what makes it middle. Is it middle of the earth? I mean, can I say because Virginia is Middle East too? Because it's in the middle between the United States, North and South, in my opinion. But that's going to be another conversation. Let's see. But yes, there are many great authors and scholars have found that the original people of Israel and Saudi Arabia are Cushites. They consider them Cushites. Now look at here. I mean, Cushite goes all the way to past Mecca. I mean, you want to look at Queen Sheba area of territory, it is in the Arabians. As a matter of fact, it is in West Yemen. That was Queen Sheba's territory. And she's black. She's a black African woman. Yeah, I'm just showing another illustration of ethnic groups, Arabs, Coptics, people of Egypt. You got your Arabs, you got the Coptics, you got your Greeks, you got the Nubians, and the Bajan. That's in Egypt. In the Arab Peninsula, you got Arabs, you got Jews, of course. You got Assyrians, Chaldeans, Mediterraneans, Mennonites, Armenians. You got Mahar. I can't even pronounce the other one because my throat. You got Kurds, you got Persians, you got Balak, you got Kamzara, Lur. You got of course the Turks. What else? And I can't remember how to pronounce the other ones. This whole region has the opportunity to be the most prosperous and powerful region on the planet. Has the opportunity to become one of the great empires or great nations if they can just stop shooting at each other. And of course, remember I was telling you about the influence of the British, of these empires where, okay, here you go. You see on your left, you see Spain which controlled parts of Morocco up to 1912. You got the French Algeria that was under the French influence, and Tunisia that was under the French influence, Algiers. You also have Libya that was under the Italians. Of course, Somalia was under Italian control until 32. That's when, right before the war, you have the British Empire that was in control of Egypt, Sudan, and southern Sudan, Anglo-Egyptian, or has influence in those regions. And if you look to the right, that's including the Suez Canal, Turks, the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman, which is the Turks, has control of most of the Middle Eastern countries, as we know, from Baghdad. Actually, the capital was Baghdad, not Istanbul. It was Baghdad, but later it moved to Istanbul. It used to be Constantinopolis. It used to be called what? Constantine or Constantinopolis at one time. I know I'm going back and forth in history. Just bear with me. I'm a man of many knowledge. But yes. I mean, the Turks used to have an empire. If you see the green line, has spanned all the way from Greece. I mean, all the way up to what is now Algeria. At one point in time, the caliphate was a really big thing. Okay, until later into the 1800s, and they were starting to lose power. Of course, there was those things that was their maximum expansion. I mean, they didn't get Riyadh. They didn't get the south of the Persian up to what is called what is now known as Yemen. They didn't go that far. They went as far as they can go. But that's the extent of their empire. And then you got the Persian Empire, which is half of it is controlled by the Russian Empire. And of course, the British Empire, which is their company, was controlled by the Brits. So there was like some pie cutting here and there, some corruption. You know, you got some independent area in between. There were, of course, the Saudis, certain parts of their kingdom were independent. And I mean, and the Jordanians were living independent, but the very bulk of it was under the caliphate of the Ottoman Empire. Okay. And there's many who still want that caliphate back. And then you have the European colonization here of Africa, the rest of Kush. Of course, Ethiopia was founded in 1000 BC. I believe it was a little earlier than that. But of course, it was occupied by the Italians and from 36 to 41. You got Djibouti, who became independent in 77 as a country. Then you got Eritrea, which was ruled by the Italians at one point till 41, then came under British control till 52, and it was part of Ethiopia till 93. And so you see here, the British, everything in brown was controlled by the British. And you see, like Nambia was controlled by the Deutschland, by Germany, the Empire of Germany. In blue, you see like Algeria, Malay, not Nigeria, because Nigeria was controlled by the Brits. Ghana was controlled by the Brits. Where is Liberia? Liberia was independent because of us, America, founded in 1847. That because the United States free slaves were sent to Liberia and established Liberia. That thanks to the United States. And of course, slavery is still going on, but we'll talk about slavery later. You see Gambia now came free in 65. Cape Verde in 1975. You got all these countries that's in blue that were under the French Empire, including Madagascar. I didn't know Madagascar was under the French Empire. I really didn't know that. I really didn't know that. And you got Zimbabwe that was under the Portuguese, and the Portuguese had, when you talk about Russia, you're talking about atrocities. You know, the Portuguese tore up, not the Portuguese, the Belgians tore up a lot of, they really tore up Rwanda and the Congos and the Burundis, they really tore up that region of Africa. And it was a shame what they have done. You talking about a Holocaust? I mean, the Holocaust that Hitler did was nothing compared to what Belgium had done. Small country of Belgium had an empire and took advantage of people using their technology. And they massacred millions of Congolese and Rwandans. Okay, they were in slavery. Of course, Mozambique was in Portugal. Angola was under control of Portugal. And Sao Tome was controlled by the Portuguese until 75 independence. But as you can see, the corruptions and greed of these colonial empires has really, if not all out, destroyed a lot of the cultures within these colonies. And there was no need for that. There was no need. But it was for a time of history. And that part of history, I encourage each and every one of you to never forget. Remember who you are. Be proud of who you are. Be good. Be kind to yourself and your people. And just remember, people do commit sin and make mistakes. And some do it on purpose, but don't repeat what they do. Okay, learn from it. In Europe, the Romans was in charge, so they had a lot of colonies there. So it's a learning process. Let's move on. Of course, again, the colonization of Akush. Of course, the one in white further down, about before it was conquered. I can't remember the date on this map, but you got to remember in that part of South Africa, it was ruled by a tribe, that warrior tribe. I can't think about it. I can't remember. It was a movie based on it too. I can't remember it. But anyway, Zako Zulu, that's Zako Zulu. I mean, I can't. I think that's what it was. And of course, Liberia was independent too, and so was Ethiopia was independent. But the rest of those territories in Africa were under control through colonization. Brits really have firm control. I mean, North Rhodesia, South Rhodesia. I mean, the Germans took advantage of it. You got Portuguese had control. I mean, a lot of countries had firm control of these regions. Okay, and just got to remember to learn not to repeat. Unlike Russia, what Russia is doing. And so here's another map of 1880. Giving you a little history. (1880), and if you look to your right, that's when the Brits and the French Ottomans have control. At one point in Egypt, in Tripoli and Libya, the Ottomans had firm control of the north part of Africa. In 1913, right before the First World War, that was a map controlled by many European nations. Look how much territory they have gained. The Brits have the bulk of it. The Brits and the French both profited, as well as the Belgians, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Italians, definitely. Libya and and Somalia and the other corner of Africa definitely have taken advantage of these nations. And I got a picture of this United flag, the United Nations flag. And one thing I like about the United Nations and hate about the United Nations too at the same time. But I like the United Nations because it promotes humanity. It promotes, let's talk about it before we start shooting. It promotes peace. It provides financial, economic aid to a country that has lack of resources. And it also is a good way to keep them from going to somebody else next door and taking their resources. Needless to say, we can't help the Russians because Russia wants East Ukraine for its coal resources and steel. Not just the free ethnic Russians, but that's how it was. Back in the Italian day, when nations face famine or lack of rain, they go on a war path and try to conquer areas where they can get those resources. So I'm going to move on. I'm not going to hold you up there. But let's talk about Yeshua HaMashiach. Let's talk about Jesus the Christ a little bit. He is the Son of God. And I know I have skipped over a lot here. But Jesus Christ is our Savior. And why did he have to come? Because of the very thing I just spoke of in the previous slide, about conquest and imperialism, colonization, people falling into slavery, the spirit of Cain and Abel that still exists and trouble this world. I mean, Jesus had to come because we're in a generation of sin. Our curse is sin. And if you ever watched one of my videos, I covered 370 sins. I covered all the way so far up to 93, 94, 96 cents. I still got a lot to go. And that's why the Messiah had to come. And the Messiah is coming back for a church without a spot or wrinkle. We have to decide, are we going to be that church? But you got to understand what sin is. And if you understand what sin is, then you can adjust, you let your mind be in you as a Christ Jesus a lot quicker, a lot better. And that way you can have the love for your fellow man through Christ and your fellow brothers and sisters in the body. And there's so much more to be done, needs to be done. Poverty should never be this great in any nation. People who are homeless, some people are on drugs, a lot of them just homeless on purpose, don't want a job, don't want to work. You got a lot of them who are having hard luck, need a little boost, need a little assistance. And that's all it takes is just give them a helping hand, point them in the right directions, and prayerfully they'll make it, or not, put them through a coaching program. And that way, they're going to be on their way to success. If they don't want to, that's something different. Then you treat them accordingly. Amen. But let's look at slavery here. Let's look at slavery. But before we can look at slavery, let's take a look at some scriptures in relation to it. Let's take a look at my brother Ham. Okay. They say Ham was cursed. But I beg to differ. And that's why people try to justify slavery because of what? Ham. So let's go to Genesis chapter 9. Verse 24. This is the point where my Bible's fading. Where Ham saw his father Noah laying on the floor drunk, and he had his brother cover him up out of respect because he was drunk and naked. 9:24. And it said, I'm going to start off with verse 20. No, I'm going to start off with verse 19, if that's okay with y'all. And it says, these are the three sons. These are the three sons, verse 19, of Noah. And them was the whole earth overspread. Now, we already mentioned Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken. And he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brethren without, they're outside, the tent. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backwards, and they saw their father naked. Of course, Ham did. And in verse 24, Noah woke up from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servant. He said, cursed be Canaan. Servant of servant shall be unto his brother. So who's the father of Canaan? Ham. Who did Noah curse? Did he curse Canaan or Ham? He cursed Canaan, not Ham. Ham was never cursed. Ham, not one word in verse 25 mentions Ham as being cursed, but Canaan. Now he said also in verse 26, said, blessed be the Lord God of Shem and Canaan shall be his servant. All right? And God shall enlarge Joppa, and he shall dwell in the tent of Shem, and Canaan shall be his own servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. All right. First of all, Canaan was cursed, but Ham was never cursed. Let's get this part theologically clear. Ham was never cursed. Okay? For years, we've been taught that. They use it to, people have used it, and industry empires have used it to hold people into slavery. And let me tell you something, my people. Black people of African origins weren't the only ones slaves. Listen to me again. Black people, of African origin, weren't the only ones slaves, or Arabic origin weren't the only ones slaves. Because remember, North Africa considered them as Arabs. You got ancient Chinese that were held slaves, and you got most of the West Europeans and also the Baltic states and also Southern Europe that were held as slaves. Yeah, slavery was all over the world, including at Mayans in the Americas. And I'm not talking just American, but I'm talking about the Americas. Now, here's a description of the Roman territory and year. But this was this area, as you can tell, where the supply of captive slaves were part of the empire expansion of Rome. Rome is known to have slaves. They had all sorts of slaves from all apart from their own territory of Italia, but also spread out through all the Gauls of France, what is known as France and Spain, also in a land of what is now Macedonia, Greece, Asia Minor, Syria, Israel, Egypt, North Africa, where is Libya now, but Cyrenaica, Numidia. I mean, they have slaves all over the place, black, dark skin, and whites. So please, don't give me about this anger about slavery, because everybody on the planet should be angry then. And remind you how angry they are. They moved on, and so should you. Matter of fact, it was your own black brothers that put you into slavery. It was. The European powers took it as a great deal, free labor. Price for a price. But Ham was not the cause of slavery. Ham was not the cause of justification for slavery. Ham was never cursed. But what was Ham? Ham was a Cushite. All the caliphate, all this territory was caliphate of the Islamic world. Guess what, guys? This is the greatest expansion of the caliphate, okay? Greatest expansion of the caliphate, Islamic caliphate. All the way to Turkey, to later on, up to the Byzantine Empire border. All the way up to Persia. Okay? This original age of the caliphate, they had slaves. Wherever they conquered, they had slaves. Every Christian that was in Christian land of Syria, Damascus, Lebanon, Libya, or Israel, and Jews, wherever they conquered, they became slaves, or they pay a high tax. But the caliphate, Islam, did have slaves, and they instituted that trade. I mean, they even have it all the way up to Spain before they were kicked out. The caliphate was kicked out of Spain, thanks to the Frankish kingdom of France. Know the story. Know the story. Know the story. But indeed, this was the case, guys. This was the case. Now, this is a slave trade that many Brazilians, South Americans, and Black Americans understand. But if you notice here, like in the Gold Coast or the Ivory Coast, all these are West African nations. A lot of the slaves come from the West African side that goes to America, the Americas, go to Cuba, from Cuba to Florida, from Cuba to Saint Domingo, Haiti, to Jamaica, to Mexico. Yes, black slaves were sent to Mexico. You got it in you got blacks in Venezuela. How did they get there? Slave trade. South America, Brazil, you got a lot of big black community in Brazil. Huge. Why? Because the bulk of the slaves came to, not that much slave went to America, I'm not saying they're not, but a huge amount came from Africa, Central Africa to what? Brazil, and what else? What else? What else? What's the name of that country that? Oh man, I can't even think of the name. Argentina. So think about it, guys. You got slaves that were from the Caliphate sent slaves all the way up to Egypt. And they were then translated to the Arabians. Okay? North Africans slaves were sent to what? To the Caliphate's territory. So it's safe to say it's not just Europe, but it's also Islam. That Islam and the Caliphate, a lot of the spirit of the Caliphate is still producing slaves in North Africa, Northern Sudan. Northern Sudan is enslaving Southern Sudanese. I know. And if you want to see it, you dig a little deeper. I mean, you even got slave trade in Madagascar Islands. You got slave trade in India. Look how you got plenty of dark-skinned people in India. So it's not just United States. Only a small portion of Africans were sent to the United States. Huge portion was sent to Brazil and South America, and of course, distributed through the Caribbean islands and Mexico. And very few were sent to the British to Europe. So you look at 8, 12, 15 million Africans were forced out of home by fellow Africans, sold into slavery, and sold out throughout the world between 1500s and 1900s. Ham was never cursed. It was the people descendant of Canaan. And guess what? Remember Nimrod? Nimrod is a Cushite too, and a descendant of Canaan. Now, you want to see modern slavery? You got 104,000 in North Korea. You got, I can't even pronounce it, 90,000. You got another one. In Saudi Arabia, you got 21.26. Well, now I'm saying 1,000 per 1,000. Yep. 21.26,000. Turkey got 15,000 slaves. Switzerland got 0.5 slaves. You got slaves in Switzerland. Norway has slaves too, to trip. Germany has some slaves, a very small amount. They're hardly noticed. Netherlands too. Sweden as well. So a lot of you in the United States as well. You know, you look at the orange. The brighter the colors, the less slaves are there, like South Africa or Tanzania, but in Australia and places like that, in Germany and Poland, Lithuania. You got some in Poland too. You got a lot in Lithuania, and you got plenty in Belarus, and I'm surprised Ukraine, of all places, got slaves, have a high amount of slaves. So is Russia, but the dark black side. If you see the dark black side, I mean, you got a higher percent of slaves. Definitely in DPRK, North Korea. Definitely in not far from Djibouti. I think it's Djibouti or right near the Horn of Africa. Saudi Arabia, definitely. I mean, you got Filipinos that are slaves in Saudi Arabia, building, doing construction stuff, sending money home, and a lot of them sold themselves as slaves to send money to pay off loans. And you got in West Africa, some slaves, high levels of slaves by the population per 1,000. So if you see 100.66.6, you multiply that times 1,000, that's your number. And that's just based on the source Walk Free in 2023. All right. So if you want to be mad about slavery, You look at the regions that have the most slaves, okay? I mean, even Uzbekistan has a higher rate. Former Soviet Union, Uzbekistan has slaves. Georgia has slaves. Armenia has a small amount of slaves on the Caucasus Mountains. I'm looking at Uzbekistan have slaves. I mean, Afghanistan, you know they got slaves, and you got to look at. You have to look at also Pakistan, India, Burma has a high rate of slaves. I'm quite sure they have a higher rate of Christians serving as slaves because they're persecuting Christians like crazy over there. The Buddhists, and their religion is Buddhist in Burma. All right, so just take that in consideration as a grain of salt. And there it is. There's a world map of slavery. You want to be mad about slavery? Well, look around. Thank God you no longer want. But look at the people in a land of Kush that are still enslaved. You got to look at people in India and Pakistan, the Indies, they still enslaved. You look at Thailand has slaves. Myanmar has slaves. What used to be called Burma. Bangladesh was a very poor country. As a matter of fact, I talked to my doctor who was from that area, and we were discussing about the high level of poverty, and you know, if you want to talk about child trafficking as an industry, that's slavery in itself. Nepal has a high amount of. We talk about Nepal too. We talk about Moldova. We talk about a lot of them. Gambia has Ethiopia. It has a certain amount of slavery. I didn't think Ethiopia has slaves. Central Democratic Republic of Africa. Congo, slaves, number 23. But Haiti got the highest, number 2. Come on. Mauritania, number 1. You know, it's very concerning. Very concerning. You know, slavery is slavery. China, their whole people are slaves. 2 billion. A billion people are slaves, you know. India got 13 billion. Well, 13 million slaves. China got 2 million slaves. Russia got 500,000 slaves. Sweden got 1,000 slaves. Deutschland got 10,000 slaves. Britain got 4,000 slaves. United States, we got 59,644 slaves. Modern day slavery worldwide. So if we want to talk about can justifying slavery, you look around you. Everybody in every continent of the world has slaves. Peru, Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela. Of course, Haiti got the highest amount too. West Africa got the highest amount. East Africa, North Africa has the highest amount. Look at Sudan, Northern Sudan. You're looking at the Northern Sudan to the Horn of Africa region. And we don't know about Somalia. Somalia is still wild east because they got pirating there. Ivory Coast has slavery. Gambia has slavery. Sierra Leone has slavery. Togo has slavery. Ghana, Guyana has slavery. Congo has slavery. Cameroon has slavery. Uganda has slavery. So, oppression of people continue in the 21st century. It's 2024. Even New Zealand has 495 slaves. Australia has 3,167 slaves. Philippines got 149,973 slaves. Japan got 80,000 slaves. Vietnam, 284,705 slaves. Of course, Thailand got 472,811. You talking about human rights? Let's talk about that. You talking about you mad because your great-grandpa was slave? Well, look again. What about these people? A lot of these are brothers and sisters of Christ, are Christians into slavery. So that's where it is. Indian activist protests against bonded labor in New Delhi, December 2003. She tied herself up. She's protesting. Good for her. Modern slavery here. You see in green, United States. Of course, the redder it is, the worse it is. Okay? And it's by population. Sub-Saharan Africa, 6,245,000 5,800. And American news media does not even talk about it. And in the Americas, you got 2,168,000 slaves. In Europe, Western Europe, you have 1,243,400 slaves. In Russia, Eurasia, 2,800,000. Asian Pacific, of course, and the communist regime, 30,435,000. Middle East, 2,936,800. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. Definitely unacceptable. How can we talk about human rights and why the rights of other people in other nations that we trade every day have slaves, including the United States in one form? You got probably indentured servants serving their time to come here illegally. That's slavery. That's a form. In Canada too. And you also have, as I see in Europe, that's include Iceland and Greenland. Every culture, every society has slaves. You being abusing your factory, that's modernized slavery. Most of your factory jobs are set up like plantations, run by overseers. Instead of whipping you, they just write you up, take your pay, threaten to fire you, harass you. You better show up early. It's sad, but that's the world we live in. And I'm looking forward to Jesus Christ coming back for a church without a spot or wrinkle. It needs to change. For a church without a spot or wrinkle. Oh yeah, I do sound good. Okay, I just want to test. But I am appalled for what I see this morning, about 4 o'clock. And then here it is, 11 o'clock. I'm going to go back to sleep. But, Russia, Ukraine, Uzbekistan, all those former Soviet republics all have, in Eurasia, have slaves. Mongolia have a high percentage of slavery. Of course, China got a huge amount of persecution and slavery of the people of West China, holding them in bondage. Of course, all of India, So there's where it's at. So let's go back to Kush, Africa, Kush. Talk about slavery, talk about Ham. Ham was a Kush. Why? Because his son named Kush. You know how I know? Let's go to the scriptures. Let's go to the scriptures. Verse 26. Oh, here it is. Right here. Chapter 10 of Genesis. And I'm going to say chapter